All right, guys, welcome back. This is episode 4 of the Bala Fitness podcast. I appreciate you guys coming back, for giving me your time, for listening in, lending me your ears, and those of you that are joining me via YouTube, your eyes. It's an experience for me. Being someone, as you now know if you've been listening, someone that has dealt with issues related to even confidence as a youth, someone that's very introverted, someone that has had difficulty speaking live in front of people, and this is again like a huge experience for me. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you all for joining me. So I want to get straight to the point of this episode. I entitled it Find Your Happy, or H.P.P.E for short. What does happy mean to me? So happy obviously is an acronym. So sharing my journey with you guys in terms of what finding my happy was about. So let me define happy first. Happy, H represents happy or happiness. P represents passion. The second P is for purpose, and E represents empathy. So why is that all important for me? One is it's the driving force behind why I do what I do. As a coach, as a trainer, as an athlete, as a human, but also, other aspects of who I am. And this is the beauty of this podcast, because I can open up to you about my story. So I am a husband. I've been married to my wife going back 2004. So it is 2021. That's been quite a while. But even prior to that, my wife and I were boyfriend-girlfriend as far back as young teenagers. So you may have heard of, or may have seen in your own families, high school sweethearts. Interesting story and fact for my wife and I, we've been junior high sweethearts. So we've been together since our junior high days. I was in 8th grade and she was in 7th grade. So really awesome story that I would love to go into detail about with you guys. But I'll kind of give you a quick overview on that. She and I got together when she was 12 and I was 13. And now she is 40. She'll get mad at me if I get this wrong. I think she's 42 because I'm 43. So we're 6 months apart. So 42, 43, compare that to 12 and 13. You can do the math, but that's quite a long time. So it makes me happy inside to know that, I found my soulmate. I found my life partner. She's my best friend. She's my rock. She's my everything. My protector, and I'll get into that here today's episode. Why I say protector. But yeah, she brings joy to me every day. She keeps me on my toes. She's my number one supporter, but my number one critic at the same time. So she always keeps me humble, always keeps me grounded, because if she doesn't, I can kind of run off on a tangent. I'll get super happy or super excited on something, and then I might get super low or super sad or super angry on the other aspect or other spectrum. So she keeps me in check. I'm also a father. So I have a 15-year-old daughter. She's a teenager. Those of you that have been following me on social media, you can see she's grown quite a bit. So I think this year she's right about an inch underneath my height. So I'm about 5'11". So she's up there in terms of her age, her height for her age. So she's still growing, obviously. But interesting tidbit on her, she's exactly like my wife, which is so funny. She's an alpha female, like my wife. They're both alphas. So you got two alpha females in my household, and then you got me. I am by no means an alpha male. I maybe have some qualities of being an alpha male, but I'm kind of, in the middle, being alpha and not. I don't know what the other end of alpha is, but beta, I guess. But I'm kind of, I can stand my ground, but I never talk over anyone. I'm always respectful and mindful of my interactions with fellow humans and my clients, my students, my family, my friends, my colleagues, everyone. So, these two women in my life, my daughter's just like my wife, like I said, so she keeps me in check. She keeps me on my toes. She always makes me laugh no matter what. She'll tease me incessantly, and I'm wearing these like pink shorts here from Fabletics Men and Fabletics Men. Shout out to Fabletics Men. I love their gear. But she was laughing at me the other day. She's like, "Dad, what's up with the pink shorts?" And I'm like, "Why not?" I have a good friend, Philip Levy, on the previous episode. He's known for wearing pink shorts. So shout out to Philip. But just finding confidence in owning, myself. I'm 43 now. Just kind of, appreciating life for what it is. I need to, as those of you who have been listening and watching, I need to have color in my life, and that's part of my healing process and my self-care process, and something that working with my therapist has helped me identify is I used to wear a lot of black, like all the time. I have a black shirt on right now, but I never wore, I hardly wore other colors. And so now, if you looked at me maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, I didn't wear too many colors. I always had black, gray, dark blue, and that was it, and it's been a journey for me to reinvite color, because it helps me cope and reconnect with myself and reconnect with the environment. So color is huge. So I'll get into what that will be about in terms of finding your happy here today. So so a human, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm an uncle, I'm a brother, I'm a friend, a coach, or trainer. So I'll get into future podcasts about me being an uncle to my wife's nephews. I don't have blood nephews from direct family. So sister, brother, get on that train and make me an uncle for once. But I'm looking forward to becoming an uncle, through blood directly at some point. But for now, I'm an uncle to my wife's nephews, and all you nephews out there. If you're watching this, if you're not, get on this train and jump on my podcast at some point. I want to share my story with you guys. The process of seeing you guys as little ones and coming up into young adults. Excuse me. So going on to passion, my passion as a mover. Excuse me. Let me take a sip of this coffee. A human, as a human, I'm an athlete. So my passion is movement. I've been a mover and athlete since I was very young. I was huge into basketball as a kid, teenager, even as a adult, into my early 30s. I think I was playing basketball still. Shout out to cousin Paul for allowing me to reinvite that into my life, and I'd love to bring him on this podcast at some point. But I was also into track and field. I played football, not officially because my mom said you'd get broken. I shared that on episode 1 in her Filipino accent. You'll be broken, right? So meaning I was too skinny, so I couldn't play officially football, but I played, on the side, flag football, just throwing the football back and forth with friends. But I got into track and field. I played basketball, and then at some point I became a break dancer. That was another story in itself, but that was one of the happiest times that I had in my life, exploring dance, exploring movement on a different level, taking my strengths as an athlete and pushing my body in different ways. So finding my passion through dance, through breakdancing was something I definitely want to revisit. And I have a brother, Filipino brother, Coach Pete, out there that we've been talking a lot about this breakdancing movement again. So maybe you'll see something come soon from that. But my brother-in-law, Mike Avino, shout out to Mike. He and I were best friends since we were young, and eventually he married my sister, which is a beautiful thing. I hope to share their story with you guys at some point. But Mike was my mentor growing up as a b-boy, as a breakdancer. So finding my passion through dance, through movement, was one way through that. And just taking my body weight and being able to elevate myself, over into the air and just fly, and do flares and do windmills and do, crab walks and grasshoppers and, fun stuff. UFOs. You can hear from my voice, or from my story describing b-boy movements. I'm a 90s b-boy, so I was one of those kids out there that were 12, 13, all the way up till I think 17, 18 years old, just having fun. I was part of a b-boy crew. We started our b-boy crew with Mike Avino and friends. It was called Up Rocks Crew. Shout out to Mike again, to AJ. Who else was in there? Patrick. Victor. I can't even remember any other names right now. But that crew, we had a solid group that we started with, and then eventually Mike and I branched off, as well as my wife. At the time, she was my girlfriend, my sister, and our siblings. We branched off and joined this crew called E-Rock Crew, or Electro Rock Crew. They were based out of San Jose, so shout out to E-Rock. That was another awesome experience. We got to perform different places. We got to, practice daily almost. And, I hope those kids out there, the future generation, I see you guys out there on YouTube. You guys inspire me still to want to move like that. And 43-year-old body, obviously I have back issues, low back issues, issues with my wrists, but it doesn't stop me from having fun doing what I do right now as a Spartan athlete, as a ninja warrior. I can still move in that way, with body weight, but in a different modality, in different modalities. So the kids out there, keep doing what you're doing, guys. Have fun with it. Don't feel like you have to fit the mold and do traditional sports and do what your parents want you to do. Like, do what fulfills your heart. Like, I felt happiness, true happiness, and my passion was founded on through breakdancing, and sharing that experience in being a dance crew with my one of my best friends, and then my wife, my girlfriend at the time, my family, my siblings, even my kid brother, was one of our secret weapons, and Mike and the rest of the guys can attest to that. We brought Chris out there as our finisher guy. When we were battling people, he would come out and just do this silly, he was, I can't remember how old he was, maybe 3-4 years old, and he watched us practice every day, and he'd bust out with his head spin and do this crazy, he couldn't even break dance, but he just imitating what he saw in front of him, and it was an amazing one of the happiest times of my life to see my kid brother, get involved in something that I was passionate about. So thank you, little bro, for being there, and joining me on that journey when you were little. Moving on, purpose. My purpose today, and was since I made the career switch from engineering, and I'll get into that a bit here, is to serve others, to serve you as clients, as students, potential students and clients, fellow, Spartan athletes, fellow ninja warriors, share my happiness, my passion for movement, and, enact change and help you find your happy through fitness, whether it's physical, mental, social, emotional, spiritual, all those 5 facets I talked about before on one of my previous episodes. I think it was episode 2 now. But finding your purpose is huge to finding your true happiness. So I look forward to getting into detail with that on this podcast with you guys. So the last one is empathy. I have a heart, a huge heart, sometimes too big of a heart for everyone. The reason I say it's too big is I deal with anxiety, something called high functioning anxiety, where I'm a people pleaser, and if I don't please others, I can find myself in a bad spot where I get super depressed, I get super sad or super upset with myself, angry to sometimes, where if I don't make others happy and find their happiness, I can find myself in a bad spot. So part of my healing, part of my coping with my high functioning anxiety is to find solutions to work around that desire, that inner drive to make everyone happy, and I'm kind of, like I talked about earlier, people pleasing. It's hard for me to say no. Like if someone asks me to do something, I'll just do it, and no questions asked. Or if you text me and I'm with my family and I'm supposed to be spending family time with them, and I see it pop up on my iPad, I'm gonna respond. And it takes me time to remember the things that I work on with my therapist, work on with my wife, to remember to shut off. I'm talking to you today on a Friday. This is my only day off, during the week. I'm doing this because I'm passionate. I want to make change. I want to enact change and help you guys learn something from me and my journey, as a human, on how to find your happy. But I'm doing this on my day off. I should be relaxing, but this is another challenge for me. So I'm working on it, guys. I'm not perfect. Neither are you guys, and I hope you guys can see that. And so finding your happiness, part of it is through empathy, having empathy and sympathy for others, and being open to helping. So let's get on to the point of what I wanted to talk about here. So I put some notes down here. Again, I'm not perfect. I can't remember what I want to say sometimes, so I'm going to write it down. I'll just read this off to you. This is something that I wrote. So when I interact with people in general, as well as my clients and students, I find that I am my happiest. So I'll put this in the show notes, and you guys can refer to it anytime. Read through it. Message me if you want to talk about it, and I'll even jump on a quick Zoom call or whatever if you want to chat. I'm open to that, guys. So or find me, join one of my classes, jump in there, in person or online, and let's get to know each other. But I find that I'm happiest when I interact, through different mediums. One of them is this podcast. This is part of my healing, my quote unquote therapy. And my passion, I told you about before, is fitness, is movement, is helping others, level up. One of my taglines is level up your life. If you go to my website joebalafitness.com, you'll see right there, right at the beginning, level up your life. I found my way to level up my life through switching my career. And my purpose, again, as a coach, as a trainer, as a small business owner, is to help you, find your happiness, find your happy. And I'm a people person, like I told you. So E, empathy. I'm very empathetic. So let's talk about some details here. So let me give you a background story. Why did I choose, or where did I start as a human? Let me just show you something really quick. If you just Google on your iPad or MacBook or iPhone, happy, and you choose to show images, you're gonna see a ton of, happy faces and things like that. But are you, when you Google happy, what does that mean to you? So that's something that you want to define and find out for yourself. What, and write it down, or use your notes app on your phone, or your Post-it app on your phone, and write down what makes you happy. It can be one thing, it could be 5 things, whatever it is. Write down what makes you happy, and think of it, holistically. What is it about physical movement that will make you happy? If it does make you happy. If it doesn't, let me help you find that. Then you got mental aspect of it. What mentally do you do for yourself? And you can think of, meditation, journaling, things like that. What makes you happy? And then social, when you interact with your friends, when you interact with people. I know right now, because it's, we're in a pandemic and it's COVID, it's hard to get out there. And being behind these face coverings and masks that we're supposed to be wearing, it's hard to see smiles. And for me, when I see someone smile, it makes me happy. It makes me light up. And so right now I look for their eyes. If their eyes are smiling, that's when I know that I've made a difference in someone's life. So, write that down. Does that make you happy? Emotionally, what makes you happy? Is it connecting with your loved ones? My happiness is connecting on a deeper level with my wife, when we can laugh and tease each other. We were just teasing each other the other day, and I couldn't stop laughing out loud because of what I was saying to her, what she was saying to me via text. She was at work, and connecting on a deeper level with my daughter. We tease each other, like I said, all the time. They're exactly the same, my wife and daughter. So what makes you happy emotionally? And then spiritually, that's huge for me. I talked about that on my first episode with my good friend Dan Benton, as well as my second episode. I've revisited inviting God into my life, and through Dan, through some friends as well that are also believers. I've found my happiness again through connecting and reconnecting with God. So thank you guys, thank you my friends and inner circle, my tribe, for sharing your experiences with me. So I found my happiness through my spirituality, and my religion. So thank you guys. Write down those things. You have 5 things, or I have 5 things, and that's how I look at it. My holistic approach to true fitness is that, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social, right? Whatever order you need to write down, find your happy. So stepping back, why did I choose engineering as a career? So this is my story. When I was a kid, I would tinker. I would take stuff apart. I have a knack, or a thing for using my hands, using tools, using my brain, to visually take things apart. I don't know if that makes sense to any of you, those of you that are engineers, or you have those technical brains and scientific minds. Like, you basically want to understand how things work, right? And what's the best way to do that as a someone that loves to use their hands and their brain is what's called reverse engineering. So I didn't know this at the time when I was a kid, but I would reverse engineer things. I would take a clock apart, open it up, and like remove all the gears, remove all the screws from after I did the screws, obviously. So take the screws out, open the casing, look at it internally, like, oh wow, look at all these gears, look at these little mechanical components. And that's what eventually led to my career as a mechanical engineer. So I studied mechanical engineering. I went to San Jose State University, so SJSU. That was one of the funnest times in my life, experiencing what it was like to, understand the aspects and facets of mechanical engineering. I studied things like dynamics, thermodynamics, mechanical design, what else? Even before San Jose State, physics in my undergrad or general education. I learned all levels of physics, chemistry, math. I can't remember now. The highest math class I went to was, I think, called differential equations, which is super nerdy. So if you've never learned differential equations, I think I had the funnest time in that class, because it took things, like I said, I love taking things apart. It took math to a different level for me, and I was able to kind of like deduce why things did things the way, or why the mathematicians out there did the things the way they did, and how that related to engineering. And that's where I found my, one of my passions, which was anything tech, engineering, science, all that kind of molded together in what I discovered later on as engineering. And so, going through college, that was one of the greatest experiences. And then I studied specifically mechatronics. So mechatronics is mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and then computer science. So if you meld, or computer engineering, you meld all those three together. That's what mechatronics is. So think of people that work in robotics. Think of people that work in automation, where you got a factory and you got, a product, let's say a Tesla or a car, going through the factory. All the components that build up that car, or that item or product that you buy. From system design to software applications, things like that. You, as a mechanical engineer and someone that gets into mechatronics, we're gonna integrate with an electrical engineer. We're gonna integrate with a computer engineer, computer science. And mechanical engineers, like wholeheartedly, like a hardcore mechanical design engineer. So we're kind of I don't know if you could say this, a jack of all trades in terms of all those different facets of engineering. But I loved it when I found out about it. I think the first experience I had at San Jose State was going into a class and seeing a arcade machine, one of those traditional arcade machines, and they showed me the inner workings of that box, and I was like, ooh, I want to do that. So that's what led me to mechanical engineering, specifically mechatronics. So anyway, schooling. So I got schooling. Now, how did I get into my career as an engineer? I started doing internships. Seagate was one place. One of the best experiences I ever had as an engineering intern there. I saw all the processes involved, what a mechanical engineer does, what an electrical engineer does, what a product manager does, what a principal engineer does, like all the different types of levels of engineering. I experienced all that. Production engineering even. So and eventually I did some more, internships, and even did, as in back thinking back to college, in my college days, I even worked in a mechatronics engineering lab. So I was a lab instructor, so super nerdy. I know, guys, but that's me. That's my brain. I'm a nerd, and that's why I have a love for learning. But getting from the engineering internships and co-ops and things like that eventually led me to my first career, our first job out of college, which was a company called Dactron, Dactron. If you Google it, you should see some products still out there, but they're no longer operating. But the products that they released and the things that they did, it was pure engineering, like hardware design, electrical engineering, software engineering, software development, and then product development, product management. You can hear the whole aspect and variety of things that I got involved in that company. So thank you for that experience. Shout out to my former manager Dave Galliard, our president at the time and founder James Zug. So Dave's retired now. James is doing some awesome stuff in the industry with Crystal Instruments. So if you look up Crystal Instruments, you'll see what that's about. But eventually Dactron was bought by a company called LDS. LDS does like vibration shaking systems, vibration shakers. So think of an iPad. You put it on a let's say this coffee cup here is the shaker. It's sitting on there. It's gonna vibrate like this. It's gonna shake the heck out of this product to see if it's reliable for one, but to test it to make sure that it can withstand drops. So shake tests, drop shock tests. I'm gonna get super nerdy with you guys. Vibration in general can affect any product. Even this iPhone that I'm recording this podcast on, you're seeing me here. I have my MacBook in front of me. Let's say I was outside walking around and I dropped this MacBook. That encountered what's called a drop shock. I think that's what it was. It's been a while since I've done that, but there's basically tests out there that test impact. So impact testing. There you go. So what level of impact does that product or this product endure? How much can it endure? And what tweaks do we need to apply to the design so that it can withstand these shocks? And so usage of the product is important, to know. And from a product development standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, from a marketing, sales, the whole nine. If you are gonna release a product, you better know and test that product to make sure that it can withstand these kind of things. So that's what LDS was about, and LDS bought Dactron, and we had these awesome systems that we integrated together. So I did the software hardware stuff as an application engineer. I worked with clients every day, in person, on the phone, via email, or even online. At the time, now we have Zoom. Back then it was WebEx, and even prior to WebEx, it was GoToMeeting and LogMeIn, I think is what the other one was that I used. But I had all these tools back then. And so eventually, Dactron LDS was bought by a company called B&K, so Brulin Care. Shout out to my colleagues from Brulin Care, B&K for short. They're based out of Denmark. I had an amazing experience with them as well. And just, B&K, they're in the sound and vibration business. So using this I have a podcasting mic here in front of me. There's a mic on that iPhone that I'm recording this on. There's mics that are built into this MacBook on the iPhone. So that's the business that B&K was in, sound, is a huge component of them. So look them up. But sound, and then also vibration. So vibration, how much vibration, again, can a product withstand or endure. So that was the reason why I got into engineering, was I loved the technical aspects of why things worked and what led me to pursue that as a career. I did engineering for about 15 years. Thinking back, that was a ton of time. I put in so much effort daily, literally, I think 6 days a week, 7 days even at the time. I'm thinking back, my wife would tell me, she would tell me, Joe, you need to shut off your brain. Turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. I could not disconnect. And that's what kind of led me to my fall, as a human. And that's the next thing I want to share with you, is what led me to my fall. What led me to finding out I have depression and anxiety. And I didn't know this at the time, but insomnia. And then eventually my first mental breakdown. So I'm going to unpack this for you as best I can. I'm going to talk for another 10 minutes here, so I respect your time, guys, and I appreciate you, but there's so much more to my story that I don't have enough time to share in one podcast, so I'll be sharing this kind of throughout, and you're going to see a video series on my story at some point with my brother, my good friend, Derek Diaz. We're going to release that in 2022 January, so look forward to that. I look forward to sharing that with you guys, but for now we got this medium here, podcasting, YouTube video. So what led me to my mental breakdown? I fell hard. Falling hard was one of the hardest things that I've gone through in my life. When I say fall, like I said, I had all these things going on. I was so happy, or I thought so happy and passionate about what I was doing, and I was so caught up in my day-to-day that I didn't see, it wasn't apparent to me what I was missing, I guess, in terms of my care. Yes, I worked out, but I didn't truly practice self-care. I don't know if that makes sense. So let me break that down. Self-care pertains to giving back to yourself, pursuing hobbies, appreciating the world around you, the earth, grounding yourself, appreciating colors. I mentioned earlier, I had these pink shorts on. I'm working daily to find myself again. Like it's a process, and appreciating colors, getting out there, looking at the greens, the lavenders, the violets, the blues, getting out of my mind where I only saw black, gray, dark blue. It's so important that you guys have to realize that. And self-care involves also journaling. Like I learned that from my great friend Melanie Woods. So shout out to Melanie. I hope to see her and have her on this podcast at some point soon. But she broke down journaling for me in a way that I could relate to. I've never been one to have a quote-unquote diary or journal. I have received gifts in the past, including from my wife, to have a journal, to write thoughts down, but I just never did it. And now it's a practice that I work on, daily. And sometimes I even verbally journal. I'll take my iPhone and turn on the recorder and just start talking. And that's my way of capturing my thoughts, what's in my head, and putting it down. Because if you don't, practice journaling or practice verbally talking to yourself, you're gonna miss out on some things. You're not gonna see things from the outside in. So which is huge, you know. And my wife was someone that I admit I did not see what she was seeing, you know, if that makes sense. So being a married couple, that's in and of itself another conversation. But being in a marriage takes work, and you have to meet your partner equally daily, you know, if you can. You know, there's going to be ups and downs, obviously. You know, she might have a good day and I might have a bad day, but we have to come back to that homeostasis where we're feeding off each other and feeding ourselves individually as well, practicing those things we talked about earlier, self-care. So part of self-care as well is you know, socializing, like interacting with your fellow humans, you know, through whatever medium it is. And this is one of my mediums, podcasting now, YouTube, jumping on social media. Even though I might not feel comfortable sometimes, I'll do it because it's a practice. It's something that I have to tackle internally, because if I don't, what happens? I will internalize my thoughts. I will begin to ruminate. And rumination, something I had to learn down the line when I fully started to understand and grasp my challenges with depression and anxiety. Rumination, you know, running thoughts in your head, and if you internalize and you compartmentalize that, guess what? That'll weigh you down to the point where you will break. And I hope in my interactions through this medium, through interactions with those friends and family and colleagues and coworkers, my tribe, and you that are watching this and listening can learn, is you need to not ruminate. And especially those of you that are dealing with mental health challenges, you have to get out there and do something. Don't just lay in bed, even though you want to. Get up, you know. And if it takes you listening to me, sharing my story, and my posts that I try to put out, I'm gonna do those mental health posts, and I'm gonna open up about my story and share it with you, because if I can make a difference in one person's life, I've done my job, you know. And if I can do that daily and that compounds, I'm doing even better job, because that fulfills my heart internally, my passions to want to help people. So, you know, this is why I'm opening up to you guys. This is why I'm being human, and this is my journey. So when I had my mental breakdown after that engineering career, or when I found, or not after, actually during my engineering career, I had a mental breakdown. I didn't know, I couldn't see the signs at first, but at some point I had a mental breakdown towards the latter half of my career. And what happened was it kind of put me on this trajectory. Initially, when I started as an engineer, I was on this trajectory. I peaked at some point, and then eventually I started falling. You know, and that fall eventually had a valley. And that valley, guess what? That valley is there. It's like falling on the ground. Like, let's say as a Spartan athlete or a ninja, you know, you crash on the ground. You know, you fall off the obstacle. Or if you don't climb or do anything like that, and you're running and you trip, guess what? You're gonna hit the ground and it hurts, right? So that's what happened to me. I hit the ground literally and internally, and I faltered. Like, I fell hard, and like I started with, I fell hard. And so, you know, and on top of that, I had, like I said, I had depression. I found that I have depression, I have anxiety, and my insomnia. Ooh, being an engineer or being a technical person, you know, especially someone that lives in the Silicon Valley, I could tell you right now, I have former colleagues and people that I've worked with, and still to this day, clients, students, friends, family members that don't sleep. Insomnia is a form of a mental health challenge. Um, it may not seem like it, but it is. Insomnia, why are people insomniacs? One, they may get obsessed over something and they can't sleep and they just want to continue doing it. Like, for example, a guy or girl that's working on a project, a technical project, and you got deadlines, managers pushing down on you, sales is needing numbers, and they're like, get this done, get this done, get this done. And yeah, your stress is gonna go up, but guess what happens? You're gonna boil over. You only have, let's say this is my stress, bucket right here in my head. My stress here, eventually over time, what's gonna happen? It's gonna keep going, and eventually it spills over. When that stress bucket spills over, that's the start of your decline. And until you quote unquote wake up and realize it, it might be too late. And so it might be too late. It might be the point where that inflection point is going to lead to your mental breakdown. And fortunate for me, and I didn't even get into the nitty gritty of my fall, and I'm gonna create a part 2 of this podcast, because I realize we're 47 minutes in and I've been ranting. I hope I wasn't ranting, but if I was, my apologies. But I hope I've made some impact on your life up to this point in this podcast, and help you realize something. When you're an insomniac, your lack of sleep, one, is going to affect you physically, emotionally as well. You might find anger through things that normally would not anger you, because your body is off. And so I said physically, I said emotionally, but also mentally. Your cognitive abilities are going to diminish. Your ability to process things is going to diminish. Your ability to, sometimes you might even see things that, you might forget, or you might see things that are there that aren't there. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. There was a time in my engineering career, back as far as college, working on my senior design project, that last 2 weeks, I don't think I slept, maybe an hour or two a night, because I was working with my group to try to get that project out the door and let's get us graduated. I don't remember sleeping, and I was working full time at the time as well, and caring for my dad, and being engaged to my wife at the time, my fiance at the time. And so I didn't have a lot to I didn't have a good toolkit to balance all that. And so being an insomniac is not a good thing, guys. So I work on it. There's times where I don't sleep sometimes, still today, and I'm trying to make it a point that you need to shut off your brain. Like, don't ruminate. How do you not ruminate? Journal. Literally take a pen and a piece of paper and write down those thoughts that are in your head before you go to bed. Write them down. Eventually, what will happen? You'll fall asleep. You get tired and you want to fall asleep. So put that pen and paper aside. Don't use your phone to journal, ideally. But pen and paper, write it down. Make it a practice. If you journal and do it regularly, it'll compound over time. You'll find that you have a way to deal with your insomnia. And put your phone on the other side of the room, or in a different room completely. That's another way to get better sleep, and if you can do those two things, trust me, you will be able to deal with your insomnia better. The third thing, if you are the type that are a workaholic, don't be like me, and don't end up in that situation where you have that mental break. Set a guideline for yourself, and work with your wife or husband or significant other, and your children, if you have kids like I do. I have a daughter. set guidelines and set limits. You know, if you're going to start work in the morning at 8 a.m., cut it off by 5 or 6. And that's your guideline right there. Everything else outside of that, that's family time, that's self-care time, that's hobbies, projects that you want to do and pursue. So I'm going to end this here, my part 1 of my Find Your Happy podcast episode. I appreciate you guys joining me, but I will resume my story on this in the second part of this podcast episode. I want to give you kind of a preview on that. I made a cry for help to my wife to help me deal with my fall, and I was in a bad spot, guys. And I'll talk about that in detail, as much detail as I can, in the next episode or part of this episode. How did I heal? You know, what did I do to find my way out of that dark place? And my reawakening. I take that description very close to my heart. It's reawakening is so huge. So I found myself again, and I redefined myself again. And I ended up in a new chapter. And so my story, like we all have in our lives, is our books, and our stories are made up of chapters. So I had that previous chapter. I'm in this new chapter. I even had one before that. But you know, I'll share that with you in the next episode and part of this podcast. But in my new chapter now, and what am I doing daily? Physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, and spiritually, to heal, you know, to find myself and continue to, you know, redefine myself. Because I'm not perfect. Neither are you. No one's perfect. And if anyone tells you they're perfect, they're not perfect. They're just, you know, there's this facade that they're behind, and you know, it's unfortunate if they think they're perfect, because no one is perfect. And you know, we are all a work in progress daily, and don't be afraid to admit your faults. Don't be afraid to show your weakness. Don't be afraid to celebrate your strengths. But don't be afraid this is my number 1 tip that I want to end with today. Don't be afraid to be human. You know, don't be afraid to show your 100% true, authentic self. I love you guys. Thank you guys for listening in and watching. Till next time, on the next part of this podcast episode. Take what you learned today and hopefully find your happy. I'll catch you guys next time.